Hey everyone, my name is Kayla and I am an upcoming high school science teacher.
And my name's Haley, and I'm an upcoming history teacher.
And today we're going to be talking about motivation in the classroom. We're both currently enrolled at the University of West Georgia getting our master's in education. And we are learning a lot about motivation this semester with Dr. Yang's class. And we're going to talk about some theories that we have gotten to not only learn about this semester, but really got to do a hands on application with it in our lives.
And we wanted to make sure that we specifically focus on high school teachers because that is what we both want to be. And the practices and the applications that we experience firsthand were more of the higher level students.
Mhm.
So we wanted to help those of you who are history teachers at the beginning of the school year, since we have just gotten back from summer break and now you're about to start goal setting and these different motivational practices. So that's what our video is for.
Yeah. And so we all know those back to school blues. I feel like that can be for not only students, but for educators as well. It's kind of hard that transition back into getting all of our students back in the classroom. It's new students, it's a new school year. So, a few theories that we're going to go through is not only something that will get your kids excited to be back in the classroom, but you can use it throughout the school year. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the goals and goal orientation theory. And Haley's going to kind of go over what needs versus goals are, and then we'll kind of dive more into it.
Yep. So goals we have from our main book, which will be listed in our references. We kind of dove into this book through the entirety of the semester, but it lists that goals may be thought of as a cognitive representation of needs or drives. And that the needs and goals also provide the direction in which to act. They guide individuals to approach or to avoid certain courses of action to satisfy the needs or attain the goals. And so Kayla's now going to talk about a key component that we've learned about throughout this course, pertaining a good bit to goals and goal orientation theory at the beginning of the school year.
Yeah, and I mean, all educators, we've all had to take psychology before, and it always comes back to Maslow. So when we have to start learning about our kids and kind of getting excited for the school year, we have to go back to our foundations, which is our hierarchy of needs. We need to ensure that our kids are not only have food, shelter, they're in a safe environment, but we have to make sure that they're in the right type of classroom for what their needs are. If they or need to be in a higher level course or go back to maybe a lower level, but this will kind of help with anxiety, fear, and just overall making them feel safe in our classrooms. We also have to kind of prove ourselves that we are a credible source, that they can rely on us, that we really know what we're doing and what we're teaching. And this will just really create a nice solid foundation. So then we now can move forward into reaching those higher level on the little pyramid that you see here and going into setting goals and to achieving our goals.
And looking, if you look at the additional needs, which is, it sits in that yellow part in the middle of the pyramid, we look at social acceptance, identity, and how it affects these students. So, identity and social acceptance is obviously a big thing, as you guys know, for history students in any of the grades. But then tying that now to self-regulation, which we're about to get into, and then mastery and performance, looking at all these different needs is a vital component. So we wanted to make sure that we put that first.
Perfect. And so after Haley kind of talks more about that self-regulation and social acceptance, then we'll kind of go into the different types of goals we might see our students start to form throughout the year.
Mm-hmm. So in self-regulation, it wasn't necessarily presented to us as a theory per se, but it was more of a framework. And this was mainly done by Zimmerman, um, and he demonstrates learners' abilities for choice. So choice was a big part that he talked about for self-determination, self-regulation, and making sure that students aim more so not to neglect their freedoms and their choices, but that they do things that they know they're capable of. and not things that they feel need to be socially acceptable or need to be done by performance. So he addresses things like why, how, all those different questions that kind of go into creating those goals, especially at the beginning of the year. But then we even talk about the structure within the classroom. And as you look to the left, there's the music model, which we referenced a good bit in our class by a professor named Brett Jones, who had a PhD. I cannot remember from where,
West
but
Virginia Tech.
West Virginia
Yep.
Tech. So that component kept coming up over and over. So we wanted to incorporate that because it's a visual component that students can kind of look at and kind of see where they are, and it's also beneficial for you guys as educators. So as you see there, there's empowerment, usefulness, success, interest, and caring, and how those different components, but how those different things just continue to come back to the root of that goal setting. And then if you look to the right, there's target. So you have your task, what kind of task you're going to introduce that day, that week, that's going to impact your student, the authority, so how you assert yourself in the classroom, the recognition. Instead of giving just a generic good job, you give more of that deeper feedback um, to help them grow, and then grouping, whatever that may look like in your classroom, evaluation, the different kind of methods that you're going to present for the different week, the different task, and then timing, the different duration, how long of a turnaround that they might have to complete that assignment.
Perfect. And now that we've used some of those models in our classroom to set our kids up for success, now we're going to kind of go into what type of goals we might see them making. There's two different types of goal orientations, which is basically just saying like what type of goal are they wanting to achieve. There's different reasonings behind their goals. So the two are going to be the mastery orientation goal and then the performance orientation goal. Starting off with mastery, I mean, kind of self explanatory, but they are wanting to master a new skill, a new, it's just something challenging that they can accomplish for themselves. That's going to be the major part of it. You're going to see these goals. They're going to look like I'm excited to master and learn this new skill for me. And you can see that they're just really excited and it's really task oriented. Then next you're going to see is the performance orientation goal. This is more for the students that are just there to I guess, I mean, I don't want to use another word, but just perform for their friends. They're there they want to be kind of the shining star, but they don't really care too much about the information at hand. I always use an example of that. Their family or their parents at home or whoever's there, their guardian, it has this outlook that they need to come home with A's and B's, and that student's going to come to school and do whatever they can to get those A's and B's and then move on, and just so they can go into something that they actually maybe care about. I know I see that a lot in science, just because some kids just aren't into it. They're going to memorize the information, do the test, and move on. But looking at both of these types of goals, there's going to be the ones that are just really doing it to succeed. But then there's the mastery avoidance and performance avoidance. These are the kids that they might be doing this type of goals just so they can not have to perform in another way. Like mastery avoidance, they're going to learn to do a skill this way so they can kind of avoid having to do it a certain way that might be more challenging or that they just aren't that interested in. And then performance avoidance, they're going to do something just so they aren't judged by their peers, that they're going to do well reading in class because they don't want to be made fun of, because maybe they are very good with their verbal skills. So this is just a great way for us to kind of learn more about our students and what they expect throughout the school year.
And now, looking just a little bit at a different theorist, there's Fessinger's theory on social comparison. So we touched on in Maslow's hierarchy of needs that social component, and you see that a lot through performance orientation goal. But going a little bit deeper, he formed this theory which proposed that people are inherently motivated to evaluate their abilities and opinions and that they often do this by comparing themselves to others. So this will present itself through goal orientation time and time again, and that it can be stemmed from an imbalance of those needs that were presented in Maslow's hierarchy, and being able to use the music model or the target model or different strategies to enhance learning and enhance success in the students. Um, so getting into social cognitive theory supports the specific attainable goals with difficulty. So looking at social cognitive theory and looking at the social comparison, um, my I had a specific attribution experience, and I applied goals and goal orientation to my specific situation that I was dealing with. I'm a substitute teacher currently, and there was a group of ninth grade girls, and I overheard their conversation. They were talking a good bit about how they didn't really care about school. So already you could tell that they were kind of fitting into that performance category of orientations. And they just wanted to breeze through. Like they wanted to do the bare minimum, and just make sure they came home with a specific grade so that they weren't the outcast of their friend group. And their parents didn't give them punishment or not let them go hang out with their friends. So they didn't necessarily care about the information. They weren't enjoying it. They were just had a lot of anxiety and wanted to make sure they performed for their family and their peers. So I addressed this by having first like some smaller conversations with them, and we kind of got to the root of what their issue was with learning, what their issue was with history, and tried to make sure that we could try and change that around so that they'd establish more of mastery goals. So that was a big takeaway, is just having those conversations at the beginning of the year is a crucial point to do that. They had been making these performance goals for about a semester, so they were stuck in this routine of I just need this grade. So I think setting those individual goals and making sure as an educator you help them to set those goals will be important so that you can then have success like I did, where they eventually started enjoying the subjects. They enjoyed the material, and they still got the grades that they were wanting, but they were enjoying it now. They had a smile on their face when they were taking their grades back to their parents and showing them to their friends. So it was very successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And feeding off us as educators, it's really important for us to be able to give the students a proper environment to want to lean towards more of those mastery approach goals. And a part of that is going to be goal setting. At the top of this slide, you see it. We listed off a few different theorists that have really emphasized the importance of goal setting, but the overall consensus is that self-set goals really increase motivation. We can try to set goals for our students in our classrooms and even the school, but if the kids aren't really that interested in it, they're not going to want to perform, because the big thing about setting a goal is going to be the commitment base behind it. You can set a goal any day, but if you aren't actually going to put in the work behind it, it's not going to be successful. So that's why us as teachers, we really have to look at their goals. If we have one student that's super excited about this big overall, like I'm going to Harvard, I'm going to be a doctor. Okay, well, let's take a step back. Let's see what type of steps that you need to do to actually achieve those goals. And that's why we put an example of this mountain, like climbing up the mountain, of climbing Mount Everest. You aren't going to do that trip in a day. And so you're going to have to make smaller, attainable, self-set goals that you can achieve to then master and achieve your overall goal. So us as educators can really help provide that for our students. So throughout this semester, Dr. Yang has had us take some of these theories that we've been learning about and apply them to our own lives. Haley's already mentioned about the students that she worked with that were really struggling with kind of that performance goal. But one thing that I worked on for the goal orientation theory was with my sister. Even though this is outside the classroom, my sister was going through a life change at the time. She just had two small children and she was wanting to make some career changes. And with this, we decided to work together of trying to figure out one, what her goal was going to be, but two, how was she going to get there? So overall goal was going to be making her own new company, her get an LLC, and so we had to figure out what steps we even had to do to get there. We worked together. We made small, attainable goals, like you can see here with this SMART acronym here. So they were very specific goals. We could measure them. They were attainable. They were very relevant to the goal, and we could do it in a timely manner. So these small steps that we can do can make goals more achievable, which is going to increase motivation. We also made a nice visual for her where she can mark off every time she completed a task or a goal, and that also increased motivation. So I think that's super helpful for more of our visual learners or our more tangible learners that they want to be able to mark something off. So those are little things that we can look at of applying to our classroom to help motivate our kids a little bit more when we're looking at goal setting.
And one extra takeaway just to be mindful of, we have written here in purple that just there's different students that'll have different levels of learning. As you each know, there's different IEPs or there's different learning strategies. So differentiating learning will be a vital tool for you guys, especially at the beginning of the school year, when establishing those goals, just to make sure that you're mindful of those different levels. Make sure you look at their individual needs and help them to set goals that they know that they can reach so that they will stay motivated and that they'll push through the middle of the school year and towards the end. And now we're going to shift to causal attribution so that Kayla can talk about a different component.
Yeah. So with the causal attribution theory, basically we have to look at what even is an attribution. So the definition is just that attributions are our perceived causes of outcomes. So the students are always, they see the outcome, they see that either they failed, they succeeded, they had some type of outcome that either they're happy with or they're very upset with. And they're going to say, oh, well, it was because of this. They're always wanting to have a why of something that happened. And this is the big theorist with this theory was going to be Bernard Weiner. Of course, there's a few other theorists that have worked on this, but he is definitely the father of this theory. But the big thing to just kind of take away that we have to remind ourselves as educators is that the perceived cause right now is more important than the actual cause. The students, they won't always see the actual reasoning behind why something happened. They're just going to see it through their lenses, through their eyes, and that's going to be their truth. So some things that we can do to kind of break down these situations a little bit more is looking at the three dimensions of the attribution theory. This is going to be locus, stability, and control. When we take a situation and we are able to break it down to this, then we can kind of dissect the information a little bit more and be able to work with our students. So we need to know if it's an internal or an external factor of the goal, of the reasoning. The stability, if it's stable, unstable, or control. Was it completely out of their hand, completely uncontrollable, or if they had control over the situation? One example is I've always gotten good grades in history. I'm just really good at it. So then we can see that's a internal. It's a very stable and it's uncontrollable. It just came natural to them. So, and then another one was like, well, it was just unlucky. And so you can see here on this chart that luck right here falls under it's external. They had no control over it and it was unstable. And that's obviously going to be kind of out of their control. So breaking these down can kind of give us more of a look into what their perceptions are, and then we're able to help them. To kind of change some of that mindset is what's going to be called attribution retraining. This is a tool that educators can use to kind of help our students kind of maybe retrain their brains and kind of say, oh, well, maybe I can do a little bit more to make a better outcome. So basically, success just isn't their effort. I know I have like, well, I was really anxious, I did this, blah, blah, but I didn't have a good outcome. So we can give them some really good positive feedback, but strategic feedback. That's going to be very, very crucial. Whereas us as educators, we can break things down, say like, hey, you did great on A and B, but C is where we kind of had a mislip, and this is what we can do to correct this problem, and then you're going to be great at this. You're going to get it every single time. So providing feedback like that's going to be a huge, huge thing to increase motivation for our students. They're going to not only appreciate that feedback, but then they're going to trust us because they're going to see that change, and that's going to increase their self-efficacy, and it's just going to be a better environment for all of our learners. With this casual attributions, I used this with a student that I was tutoring. She was getting some not great feedback from her teacher in her human anatomy class. And it was more of a, well, you didn't put in enough effort, you didn't study. And she was just not doing well in the class along with some other students. And it was really, really hard for her to kind of wrap her head around that. So when we were working together outside the classroom, I taught her some new study tools. We really went more into the information, and then it clicked. She started doing better on her tests and her grades, and then she was kind of showing these skills with her other students in the classroom. But while I was doing that with her, I was giving her more of that strategic type feedback, saying like, hey, you did great on this and this is where we had our mislip. Why, let's look at this maybe a different way. And then that's when that clicking, the light bulb moment kind of went off for her. And so I feel like that attribution retraining was really helpful in her situation. And now she's using it more often, and she's been doing really, really well.
Now shifting to a third key, uh, broad variety of theories. There's the expectancy value theory. So, what exactly is expectancy value? It's a focus on student expectancies of academic performance with certain tasks coupled with the values placed on those tasks, and it's a means of the social cognitive perspectives. Kind of like what we were looking at with the social cognitive theory, this ties together the developmental, the social, the personality, psychology. And the theorists, there were two main ones, Eccles and Wigfield, but Lewin and Atkinson had a great role in this theory as well. As we'll see in the next slide, we'll talk about Atkinson in greater detail. But uh, as you can see here, that there are often times where the key attributes or qualities to an activity or school subject may make students' motivational interests switch off. So, depending on if they feel as though they don't have much of unattainability to the specific task, or if they don't feel like the cost is adequate, like if they're spending too much time and they want to spend it elsewhere, they might lose motivation, they might lose interest. If they don't expect to do well on it, the expectancy part, that's where your self efficacy, your confidence can lie, and eventually your identity and your motivation. So these different components come together to play a vital role. So here we look at Atkinson's achievement motivation. So Atkinson himself effectively assembled this theory of achievement, combining expectancies, needs, and values presented to the table. And so from here, using Atkinson's achievement model and looking at expectancy value, I actually had an experience where I had to apply this with some girls that I helped coach, actually. I helped with soccer. So this wasn't necessarily in the classroom, but it can pertain to the classroom because it's something that happens in everyday environments as well. But it once again pertains to you guys as history teachers. But I had a group of girls once again that were making different comments about not enjoying drills that they once did enjoy, and a lot of that boiled down to the coach that they had previously making different or having different feedback that wasn't very beneficial. It was just saying that they were doing bad, and they weren't given or offered help with that. So the cost, they wanted to spend their time doing something different that they enjoyed more. So they were losing motivation to play the sport that they once loved. They didn't expect to do well anymore because they were told that they weren't good enough, that they weren't playing well enough. So over time, they just lost that confidence, lost their sense of identity. And so I had to help rebuild that. We would do drills that were more fun, more fundamental, things to rebuild that confidence, rebuild their sense of, I can do well at this. I can attain for a college scholarship for some of them that were wanting that. So just redirecting things that had been broken down in the past and helping reinstate their ability to do things, their value in the sport that they loved, or the subject that they enjoyed, or the paper that they were writing. You fill in the blank, this can be applied for that.
Awesome. So, just kind of in our closing and a recap of everything that we've talked about, I would say some of the biggest key takeaways from all of these theories is one, Maslow's. We have to looking at meeting our students' needs, making sure that they're met, and have that nice solid foundation so we can always grow on top of it. And then also, to me, is definitely just making sure that we are understanding that we're working with our students. We have to understand their lens, their perspective, and that we can kind of help guide them, or that retraining word that I mentioned earlier, and kind of help them guide to more of those mastery type of approaches, and that they just want to succeed not only for their peers, but they really want to perform for themselves and become a better version of themselves.
And with that goal setting, I think another key takeaway and a strategy is to give that effective feedback, to offer more than just a good job or that's not good enough.
Absolutely.
Just to enhance, you can do this. You may need to work on some things because obviously it's not always going to be perfect, but being by their side and helping them through the journey of the school year in different areas that they may be struggling with is something that you'll see within each theory and is always going to be needed.
And I think we can both agree as well that with the applications that we used in our own lives and situations with our students, or with like my sister, they all had a really positive outcome. I mean, of course, we had some slip ups along the way, but overall, these motivation theories did help in those situations, and we were able to approach them from maybe a different thought or different process than we maybe usually would. So I think that was really nice to see that everything that we've used and learned that we were able to apply had a good positive outcome.
And because of that success, I think that's another key reason why we wanted to make this video, to help encourage each of you guys in the different environments that you may have, the different classroom settings, at whatever high school. We just want to extend what we've learned through this class to help each of you if you're struggling with motivation issues, for individual students that you may have, since we did find success, and we just wanted to extend that and share what we know.
Yeah, and teachers always helping teachers. We included our resources. You can look to, this textbook was really great this semester, but some other videos that we watched and really pulled from, that Brett Jones, that PhD professor from Virginia Tech, that we really enjoyed a lot of his videos. He's mentioned in here, but we just wanted to provide some of the information for you guys, and I hope that you enjoyed it and that you're able to apply some of these to your students in your classrooms to kind of just keep your kids more motivated and engaged.
We hope you guys have a great school year.
Bye, guys.
Bye.